is 7:02 p.m. I hereby call this meeting of the Londonderry Heritage District Commission meeting to order this 21st day of November 2024. First item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes.
Chair, you could appoint Megan to vote for Sue. Sue's not here,
Oh, yes, sir.
Kristen's not here. That'll give us 6 voting members. More than a
Absolutely.
quorum.
Megan, I appoint you as a voting member for tonight.
Sounds good.
First order of business is approval of minutes from our prior meeting. I actually have not had a chance to review those.
I reviewed them, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
but maybe you'd rather review them also. I'll defer to you. I didn't have
Do we want to
a
take them
problem-
two separate votes?
Yes, 2 separate votes, because not everyone would be here. I didn't have any problem with them. John crafted the first one, and then it was Tristan that did the second one.
I was actually not present for that meeting. I believe you chaired that meeting, correct?
Yes, I was present, Ted was present.
The October meeting, correct?
Yes.
We can still vote on it, you just have to abstain.
Sure.
And then Megan was present at it
Mhm.
also. So there was-
Yep.
And David. No, David was gone, Sean was gone, you were gone.
I will abstain. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept?
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt the minutes of August 22nd, 2024, as presented tonight.
October 25th.
Oh. I had also I don't think we've approved the August ones.
August
Ah.
22nd.
Ah. Okay.
Second.
Okay. Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Abstained from the 22nd meeting.
I don't think.
I was not at the 22nd.
With 3.
August 22nd minutes are accepted.
That was a special meeting also.
Yep.
And, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the minutes of October 25th, 2024, as presented tonight.
Second?
Seconded. I will abstain from this vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstentions?
As well.
So we 1, 2, 3 abstains
1, 2,
3 ayes.
3.
and 3 ayes. Okay.
And then Megan, Ted, and I were at that meeting.
Okay. Minutes have been accepted for October 25th. Okay, moving on to our design review applications. We have a public hearing on an application for formal review of the multifamily residential phase of Village on Technology Hill. Planned unit development, map 28, lots 31-6, 29-2, and map 17, lots 2, 5, 5-3, 5-4, and 5-5. Londonderry Holdings LLC, owner and applicant.
Evening, folks. All right, we're going to ad-lib a little bit since some of this, the presentation is located in my hand.
Sure.
I think if it's okay with you folks, I'll drive from over here and Tony and I will kind of bounce back and forth the room if that's okay.
We do names one more time, guys?
Of course.
Tony Nizaka, Stone River Architects.
And Nick Golan, licensed engineer and principal with TF Moran. Nick, we're not so we're here before.
You're in charge.
So while Nick's getting set up, I'll just do a sort of preliminary intro. This is the second area we're coming before the board for the Village of Technology Hill. The first area we've been through and have gotten approval on through Heritage and Planning was the retail and childcare front entry area off of Akira Way. So the area we will go over today will be it wasn't on the agenda, but the leasing office is part of the residential area section. So there's leasing office building and the housing types. There are 3 different housing type buildings. So will you go through those?
Yeah, forgive me, folks. There is not a USB port on the panel,
I thought
so
before she was doing it on that, right under the TV there behind you.
I think there's a place on the. Again?
There it is.
there we go. All right, what would you like up to?
So maybe the aerial overview, just to start, just to refamiliarize yourselves with the site. So this is showing the full village. The retail and childcare are at the upper left of the page, and the main bulk of what we'll be talking about tonight is those larger housing units in the middle of the page in the greenway, and then the smaller leasing office. You can see there's a blue basketball court sort of in the middle of the greenway. It's right to the page north of that.
If you want, Tony, actually, if I can get everybody just orientated, I know you've seen this before, you've seen us before, but it's always good to have just a little bit of a refresher. So Akira Way, located to the north, Kitty Hawk Landing to the south. These are our 2 primary points of access and egress. Just to reiterate prior conversation, the expectation is the northerly entrance off of Akira Way is the primary entrance. Southerly entrance is intended to be more of a truck route, but obviously provides a second means of access, egress for police, fire, or if folks are heading in that direction and find that to be a little bit more convenient. As Tony mentioned in the opening, you've seen the retail building, which is located where I'm circling here. The childcare, which is located to the opposite side. That was an item that we had the opportunity to review, I believe, back in August. So as we come in through the main entrance drive, we cross over a bridge feature, an important feature in that it's an amenity for an attractive standpoint, but also it preserves wildlife habitat, allows us to avoid impacting a wetland, and also because of the height of the bridge, allows for our larger mammals or otherwise to pass underneath, which is also a benefit. So as we enter in off of Akira Way, the leasing building, which Tony will have the opportunity to speak to, is one of the first things you see. You'll notice that there's an adjacent patio area, and as we work our way around these 2 concentric loops, we have our 9 residential buildings. Now, located further to the east and southeast, these are going to be items that will be before you in the future. We have our On Point building, our Envision 60K building, and then our Envision 160 building. So this is really the anchor tenant, and then further to the north would be the foundation building for the ownership group. So, overall, and I'll kind of dart into Tony's presentation where I can to make sure I speak a little bit to landscaping, a little bit to lighting. But the reality is the landscaping and lighting have been provided really to break up some of those elements of the buildings, to highlight them, and to make sure that everything ties together. Now, we may be looking at just the residential and the leasing building tonight, but it is a cohesive thought that everything needs to tie together in some element. It's not so much that everything's exactly the same, but you're going to see slight variations as you work your way through the neighborhood. It's still cohesive, but also provides a little bit of a difference between each element, so it can also be a little bit independent at the same time. So that's our kind of, we'll just do the overview there. Tony, if you want to just jump right into talking about the various elements and let me know what you would like to see or see on the big board.
Yeah, if you can pull up so we'll discuss the leasing office first, community building. So the leasing office is the first building you'll see as you pass over the bridge, as Nick mentioned, after you go through the childcare and retail area. The design party, sort of, as we mentioned before, is a village. We want to, maintain some of the look that Londonderry likes to see. We review the lookbook, but we also want to add some contemporary nature to it. That was the whole idea behind this. That we have high-tech manufacturing going on in this village, so we did want to not just look to the past, but also look to the future with this, while giving a nod to the past with how we design this. This being the first building as you cross the bridge, I don't know if you'll remember the designs for the retail and childcare. They were a bit more on the formal Londonderry side of building aesthetics. This being the first building that you pass through into the center of the village, you start to see more of a contemporary nature to this building. You'll see we did take the standing seam roof off of the front two buildings. We left it on this building for that reason. Similarly, the larger windows that you'll see right in the front of the building, that is clad in metal panel. We had some touches of metal panel in the childcare building as well. And though that room itself is a community room that anybody in the, living in the village can go use for birthday parties, events, gatherings, what have you. The rest of the building does sort of tie into the aesthetic nature that Londonderry likes to see. We're doing the same, I brought all the same materials, which we use throughout the entire project when it comes down to the retail, childcare, leasing office, and housing. So just like the childcare and retail, this building will have the same stone base that we're using on the other two.
Here, Tony, I'll put them out in front for you. Sure.
The color palette for this one, if you remember, did this board and batten. That was on on the retail and the childcare. This is common throughout the site. Again, this is not the color. I have the color chip for this.
No, I think I'm good. Anybody else want to actually touch and see
That's
the?
the actual color right there.
There you go.
Since this is the leasing office, there was a couple of elements we did on this one that are a bit different. In the gable ends, we actually have like a cedar shake style above the board and batten, whereas in the retail and childcare, it was just a clapboard. This isn't the color, this is the color. The desert tan color is the same color we're using throughout on the upper portions of the building. And
Where
then
did you say the darker color is being used?
That's just the style,
Oh,
not
this
the
is
color.
style,
Yes.
this is the color.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And then similarly with the childcare building, that sort of tan metal clad panel is this panel that will be rendered in this almond color, which is also common throughout.
So that's the texture around the large window panes above the stone on the front of the building?
This is, those three big windows
Yeah.
right in the middle,
Yeah.
that is clad.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Okay.
And that is metal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the metal becomes a common theme as we get further into the village. Once we get to the manufacturing buildings, that's probably going to be primarily the material used. Just like the childcare and retail, we had the same wood details and accents that you can see at your entry columns and soffit there, which will be the same sort of composite panel. And lastly, this will be the same for both buildings. The windows will be white, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what those windows will.
This is the pattern in this color.
We don't have that.
Like a trade show here.
So that is the leasing office. If you can go back a little bit, Nick.
Sure.
We took into advisement your idea of the asphalt shingle roof that we did change on the front too. We did feel it appropriate to maintain it on this building. I believe there are some historic buildings throughout Londonderry that do have metal roof, and we thought it sort of adds a nice touch to this building.
this one too.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Absolutely, please.
Do I see that, does it look like solar panels on the backside of the
Correct.
building?
Yes, every building but the childcare has solar panels, and the back of this building faces pretty much due south. If you actually want to go back to the aerial, Nick, real quick.
Sure.
You can kind of see that, and we'll
I
touch
think-
on it when we get back to the residential, but
Yeah, I thought I saw
every
that.
yeah, pretty much every building has, it's a small solar power plant, basically.
Oh, almost. My house is one as well.
Yeah.
so.
So that was the, yeah, that was
All right, so
leasing.
if there's no
office.
specific questions on the leasing building, we'll go ahead and flip to, where would you like to go next, sir?
Housing A, unless you had a question? Sure, of
Yeah, it's just before you jump.
course.
I think we may have discussed at one point, perhaps the consideration for asphalt-looking shingles made out of metal. Did you guys, was that with you guys?
Yes, that was a consideration. It can still be a consideration. I mean, we're not married to the standing seam per se. That we know they're out there.
Well, and maybe I can help a little bit in
Sure.
that. Yeah, there's always a lot of different options. I know when Tony and I were talking about it before, it felt like for this building in particular, this was the right fit. Not quite sure what this message says.
I'm not challenging you, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no,
why?
so
Why?
there's a lot of tools in the tool belt, and just when we look at the, the overall picture, this seemed like the right fit for this structure. Let's see.
Yeah, visually, it's a change in texture. It's a change in element as you pass by the sort of the more formal childcare and retail, and being literally the building that's right in front of your face when you cross the bridge. I think it sort of makes the user realize that as they're coming in, they've crossed a threshold into technology, truly technology hill.
All right, very good. All right,
I will make a couple of observations. One, of course, especially on smaller buildings, gable roofs, we love to see the asphalt look. It just kind of ties in with everything else in Londonderry, right? That being said, I do recognize that this building, and in fact, this entire PUD exists within a normally commercial industrial zone. Lots of the buildings around you are large industrial buildings. That being said, like I said before, asphalt is always recommended, but, yeah, just my thoughts.
So the use of this is really, you want some contrast also with the buildings that you.
Correct.
have
Yeah.
there. Yes.
You know, and the funny part about designing a master plan, a village, you know, villages in the past were built organically. You know, they didn't have, here's the style of building, here's what you need to follow. And that organic nature of building gives the richness to small towns and small villages.
There's character.
Yes.
That comes out.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I will say I like your stone at the bottom of the buildings, as with that type of roof, the rain's gonna fly right off that and it'll get dirt and mud on your building. So having it land instead on the brick will actually be a better look for the building compared to right onto the siding.
Sure, and we
It'll-
also
it'll protect it more long-term.
And we also do on all of the buildings, we have like a 3-foot like stone drip edge to, it's not mulch, that's just gonna fly all that dirt and debris up on it, so.
Wonderful.
All right. If no further questions, I will move over to building A and take it away, Tony.
So this is building A. We have buildings A, B, and C. A is the smaller of the three. The biggest comments we got about this building, first and foremost, was the color palette. We really honed in on the colors that we were going to be using here. So this one, really, it's all the same textures here, but that green metal panel, and it's always tough to see what the true color is going to be on the screen. But this is a much more earthy tone than you can see there, even with the elevation there. Similarly, that almond, that form on the main entry, the green, and then that element that kind of goes above it, that's the same almond metal panel that is used on the leasing office. And where we use the metal panel specifically are the entries of the building. You'll see that in the 2D elevations, the stair tower to the left of this rendering, and then the smaller entry in the back. We originally had metal panel on the vertical forms off the decks, but we did tone that down a little bit to introduce more of the sort of classic siding to the building. We felt this was a nice compromise between what you all were asking, but also give that touch of contemporary flair to these buildings to make it fit within the village. The other thing that we spoke on was the windows. I believe somebody had mentioned shutters and possibly divided lights. We'd rendered both of them, and to be honest, we just didn't think they were appropriate for this scale and this size and this type of building. Of course, they're very appropriate for small single-family houses, but for a larger multifamily, shutters just architecturally didn't seem to work. The final thing, and I don't think you can really see it in this rendering, I have some other pictures that we can go through from the Greenway, but somebody was concerned about being able to see the solar panels sticking up from the roof, so we did increase that parapet a tad and a little more engineering from the solar folks, and we won't see those at all. We also, again, the windows, all the trim windows, we decided on white for everything, the French doors on the decks, and then the decks, again, is the same composite wood will be used for the deck, for the ceilings of the decks, and then a fascia board around those rather than just typical white trim. All the deck railings are black aluminum. We have steel posts to hold up that structure, again, to sort of introduce some metal into the building and throughout the village. That's generally the housing buildings.
Questions on housing building A?
Okay.
I think silence is a good thing in this case. Well done, Tony. All right. Do we want to look at some other buildings, Tony?
Yeah, if we go to building B, buildings A, B, and C are all very similar. The difference really only between building A and building B is it's just longer. And there's larger stair towers at each end rather than a smaller one stair tower on building A.
Is the color difference represented in the renderings
Yes.
realistic?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have a plan of where the buildings are, and I actually didn't bring that, but this is the blue that'll be used for it. It's the same blue that's used at the child care. And again, the blue color and, oh, I'm sorry, this was the color of the board and batten on building A. And then this Oxford blue goes with this blue scheme here. So there's a mix between, building B isn't necessarily the blue building. There's a blue building A, for example. There's a blue building B. We have a third color that we'll show on building C. And then they're just kind of peppered throughout the site to give some difference as you're kind of walking through.
So there's 9 buildings, 3 different colors?
3 color schemes,
Gotcha.
correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Yep.
And there's 4 building A's, 4 building B's, and 1 building C.
I did not see a building C.
Building C, you want to
Yeah,
pull
not
that
in our
up?
packet.
rendering.
So this is, I believe, building C. and the difference being we're 3 stories on one side, 4 stories on the other. Because of the existing topography, provided us the opportunity to provide a little bit of contrast to the building, also provides a little element of storage underneath the building, which would otherwise be wasted space. So we took advantage of that opportunity.
Is there a rendering with elevations of Building C?
Yep.
I believe there is, if I can find my way to it.
I don't believe,
Yeah, we don't have it on our end.
yeah, that we have that
Yeah,
one.
it doesn't,
Right.
So building C, you'll see here, we're at the back end, if you will, the lower end, but it's still kind of the front. You'll see there where that van's pulled up, there's an overhead door, so the entire back end that is up against the earth, that's just one big storage space for overflow storage for the village, you know, extra refrigerators, stoves, siding, carpet, things of that nature. This color was one of the harder to represent in the color scheme, so I just wanted to give you this one for the stair towers.
What color is it? Like a silver?
It's called champagne. So if you look at it at different angles, sometimes it's tan, sometimes it's silver. Very hard to represent.
right, all depends
But
on
I
the
like the
lighting
silver.
that's on it.
Exactly, yeah, the lighting is.
Oh, yeah.
And then the board and batten for that one, the castle things. And then you'll see in the 2D renderings, you can kind of see that one side, I kind of noted retaining walls from some of those side elements. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. The retaining walls, we're planning on using a lot of the stone on site.
So one of the things we have is we have a lot of stone walls on the property. One of the suggestions that we received from staff, which we took to heart, was finding a way to reuse those. So where we have large boulders, it provides the opportunity to provide that element and just add it to the character. Not only whether or not it's used on this building, but interior to our greenway, where it also provides the opportunity to really break up some of those spaces. The idea is that is a mix of open space, of active space, but by adding those small 3-4 foot stone retaining walls, really adds a little extra character to it, and really just provides a little more intimacy to certain areas, which we think is a nice touch.
Blends a little bit of the character of the town, too.
Exactly.
You know, we had the green and the colonial blue. Any concerns that this will look more silver metallic than champagne?
I wouldn't say concerns necessarily. It's certainly not a color. I will say that ownership, and we have we have a design architect that worked with ownership on the colors, and the colors were very well thought through, and that was a
the
chosen
same-
palette.
That's the material, too, that's gonna be on the buildings,
Yes,
on the towers?
yes.
Is that the same material for the green and blue?
That is,
Just a
so the green and
different
blue is the accent. Think of it that way.
Yep.
So that is really where you see the 7 there. That's that kind of vertical element there. But then it's like the other ones, the main portion of that is its own color, which matches the tan.
But the material's the same? Green, blue, and this color, all same metal material? Okay.
And then one last thing I just kind of wanted to breeze through. I had just some JPEGs in there, Nick. Just said Greenway. And I think this is important. Rather than just looking at elevations, it's kind of taking in the area as a whole, getting a sense of place, really, of what this is going to be like. You know, you get a feeling here. You know, I think something that's missing in a lot of multifamily housing units is the idea of like a backyard or a front yard. And that was the idea behind the Greenway, and also as a nod to, you know, a central green in the old villages. This isn't rendered here, but as Nick alluded to, you can kind of see the topography going up in a lot of those areas. That's where we'll have like rock walls, which I think that'll also be a nod to the old rock walls you'll find throughout New Hampshire and New England, to kind of recreate that in just a somewhat larger scale. If you just want to flip through those, Nick, yeah. again, just a handful of views from the Greenway. Because I think it's important to see. It's a very nice area. It'll be active place where people can exercise and play and.
Yeah, it's really, it's passive open space, right? We have some dedicated active open space, which is more of the basketball court. There's a tot park, there's a dog park, those elements. But this allows for some creativity, I think. You know, there could be a pickup baseball game or soccer game or otherwise. And because of the topography, it is fairly flat. Where we have those grade transitions, they're really up into the buildings, so it's almost a little bit of a backstop of sorts. And you can even see it in the manner in which it's rendering that there is a bit of a grade differential as you work your way down into that element. So hopefully it provides for a nice little sledding hill. Just some of those different things that you may have grown up within your neighborhood were tried to reinvent within this central area, and because of its length and its width, it really provides just really attractive central option for the overall.
You thought through this pitch a little bit.
Talking about this is all off the cuff. But Tony mentioned in our previous meeting, we've been working on this for over 2 years. It becomes a passion because you're just really excited about what you're creating. You can see it in Tony and his eyes interaction. This is something we're both, and as a project team, just extremely proud of. And what you see out of me, this is excitement. I'm excited to be able to share this with you and to know that this is something we're able to bring to the community. So this is a nice little aerial view.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at views like this, you see it's not this crowd. There's space to move. There's space to breathe. It's not just people living on top of each other. Specifically, I did this one, so we have the solar panel shown, as you saw in the aerial, and you can't see those popping up. That was the main reason for that one. And again, this is just showing, as Nick said, the dog park, and I think you're right in front of the leasing office in this area. So,
But you can also notice, and Tony did a nice job of rendering what the landscape architect had added here, in that there's a variation of trees, and it's variation of heights, it's a variation of textures, a variation of colors. So you do get a little bit of a different feel no matter where you are within the development. Providing those shade trees was a focal point within our PUD. But one of the other things that we maybe didn't touch on as much here is the wildlife habitat component of this. These trees provide different seeds, different nuts, different berries. And in the case of the hawthorns that are provided, those berries stay very late into the winter. So we're providing additional food for the wildlife and also that extra pop of color. You also see that with the evergreens that have been selected and located throughout the facility so that you get your full New Hampshire seasons in the landscape alone. The shrubs also provide that benefit where you've got kind of a varying layered effect, which again, it all ties to our buildings. Same with our lighting. You know, we've got 20-foot poles. It's dark sky compliant lighting, consistent with what the town's requirements are. It's appropriate for access, for egress, but we're not looking to light this place up. This is supposed to be a community. So in areas where we know we need to have light, we have it, and otherwise, we allow it to be dark. And here's another good shot.
yeah,
One-
so this is the shot, just real quick, just right as you cross the bridge, obviously you're off into the grass. But that's your sort of focal point of the leasing office. The signage there, that monument sign is just sort of a placeholder at the moment. We'll have some sort of signage.
So that'll come back as a third-party vendor that'll do our signage independently. So that'll be a sign package that would come before this board in the future. But consider that one, I guess, a coming attraction. So we're hopeful these pictures help paint the picture of what we've been trying to create here over the last couple of years. That we have taken your thoughts and considerations and applied them to the project. And in anywhere where we've departed from that it was purposeful and that it was part of the design intent for the project.
All right. Questions, comments from the board?
We'll say whoever you hire to do your design work, they do fantastic work. I wish more people could hire them. So
We'll
we
leave
could
you our
actually get a
card.
clear picture of
Well,
what
I'll
our
leave you our
project-
cards.
You have a selling point here for,
I'm just in a great mood because I got to sit over here in the big seat. This was great. I didn't think this was happening tonight.
I have
Just
a
don't tell
question.
John.
Can you show in the aerial view where the tot spot or the playground would be?
Of course.
I think I might have them backwards in my rendering than what you have, Nick.
Okay.
I'm showing the dog park there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the Tot Park would be located in between the leasing building and our first residential building. We thought it was a good natural kind of break between the two uses. And the idea being if somebody's at the leasing building, they may be having a community event there because there is a common room. So between the patio that's on the other side, say somebody's having a birthday party in the community room or otherwise, the opportunity to go outside and play in the Tot Park would be a great opportunity. So there's just a slight error here in that we have the basketball court and then the dog park would be located next to it, whereas the Tot Park itself is really between those two elements.
Are you saying Tot Park?
I've
Like
never
toddler.
heard that
Park,
before.
like a
Yeah, toddler.
okay. All right.
All the tots.
Just want to make
That's
sure I
like a
understand.
It's not
playground?
the type of playground you're going to see at a junior high, or it is intended
Smaller
for. It's
structures.
intended for younger children.
Sure.
So all ages can play there.
I'm sure they will. The teenagers will hang out around the edge and make fun
Yeah.
of each other, and yeah,
Inevitably.
typical community.
Yeah. I think it looks pretty good. You've got something there. I mean, this is
Coming
this
together.
is your own creation. It's you get a whole village.
Well, we have to give all that credit to the ownership group. They laid the foundation for this. We just had to make sure it all came together. So far, so good. I know as a team, we're just extremely excited to be able to share this with you and see this move forward. We recently broke ground on the infrastructure phase, so things are moving forward.
I do want to say we definitely appreciate some of the changes you guys have made. Per our recommendations, you know, the higher parapets to hide some of the mechanicals and the solar panels is great. You know, the first two buildings being a little more in line with typical architecture in Londonderry is awesome. You know, anybody driving by is just gonna see a couple small buildings that look like everything else. The interior buildings are a little different, but again, you're in a commercial industrial zone, so. The only thing that I have a personal comment on is the third color for building C for the tower. The champagne is a little metallic for me. I'd love to see a softer earth tone, but that's personal opinion.
I'd second that.
Understood.
Anybody else?
No, no. I mean, this is the intent of the PUD to create your own village, your own community, and this is its own community.
Okay. With no other comments or questions, I'm going to recommend to approve as submitted. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Well, we thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Have a great night.
Appreciate it.
You're a good operator there, Nick. You're hired.
Well, maybe I can come back for the planning board and I can cozy in between everybody and we'll see how that goes, but.
If we do change that color, would you like to see it,
If they say that they're willing to change it and, you could resubmit to staff, we could take a look at it and just say it looks good, sure.
Or you guys will be back on signs or the next building project, or
Yes.
what's your timeline on that?
So we'll have planning for this on the 4th, so we'll probably want to get it squared away before then anyway.
You got another trip
Appreciate
up
your
there.
time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Good night.
Okay, moving on to our next design review application. We have a public hearing on an application for design review of a site plan to construct a 7,200 square foot commercial building along with associated site improvements at 5 Ricker Avenue, map 28, Lot 22-23, zoned industrial 2, Epic Properties, owner and applicant. You know what? Actually, I received a note on this from Kelly stating that the applicant would not be available. However, they did give us a plan set.
Site plan, excuse me.
So, the idea is, without them here for us to review, obviously, I think they're gonna have to come in because we have no samples, no discussion about, materials and colors to be had. But at the minimum, we can review it and, provide some feedback for them to have for when they come.
Not seeing any architecturals in here. No,
No, there's no renderings.
Site
Yeah.
plan only?
yeah, it's on site plan only.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you go before the planning board, they gotta have the renderings anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no renderings, no elevations.
Looks like a warehouse building. The area where it is in some of the old buildings from the Army Air Base days.
Yeah, the street view on this shows a very basic, oh, it could be an army building even.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like cinder block or just like a type building.
Yeah,
That's
this
there
is cinder block is the style down
Mm-hmm.
there, and I know along Harvey Road, there's a row of pine trees that look fairly mature and kind of block the site, and where they're gonna be putting the building is down below street level. So, probably what you'll see at the most is the upper part of the building and the roof. It kind of goes along parallel to Harvey Road.
So absent renderings and materials, is there anything we can do with this, or?
We don't have the information to make a judgment on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think we need to recommend for them to come before the Heritage Commission with renderings, specifics about materials, colors, landscaping, lighting, et
They do
cetera.
have landscaping on the.
There
plan-
is
plan
landscaping, is
in
there?
My only observation was I didn't see any purple lilac.
Okay.
Trying to keep with the tradition here.
Recommend to add lilacs to their landscaping plan.
Yeah. The landscaping appears to be sufficient. The most important part, the way I look at the property, is the view from Harvey Road, and it is blocked by the row of pine trees, and I think they have shown the natural vegetation, and that remains. And I think they're adding a little bit there, and adding a little bit in the front, but from the front side, from Ricker Avenue, it doesn't look like it needs to be very pretty, so.
Did you say you saw what was there currently? Is there a building on site already?
There seemed to be a building there. I'm assuming it's the same property. That's what came up on Street View, so.
Okay.
Yes, there is a building currently there. It's cement.
Okay.
Or cinder block.
All right, so
Looks like a
previously developed
grayish-
property.
What color would you sell?
Tan?
Tan, yeah, tan,
Yeah.
cinder block.
Nondescript.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the proposed building right here,
Mhm.
and this is Harvey Road. And then in the front is the parking lot.
Yep.
We'll need a signage plan too, yeah, Chris.
Yep, if there is signage, sometimes for buildings like these, they don't really have much other than wayfinding. But absolutely. So I think that we need to recommend they come before us with renderings, materials, colors, any signage plan. Did anybody see, I think I saw a lighting plan in here, so they may have that part covered.
I got lighting, but I didn't see any signage at all.
Okay.
And when I went
Yep,
by
I
there,
see
I didn't
lighting.
see any signage.
Okay.
This is the existing, let's see, because Harvey Road is up here. Building's actually perpendicular like the other one. So in between the new proposed building and the current building that there is where the parking lot is. And the entrance is off of Ricker Avenue.
There's a lighting plan, but it only shows values.
There's no fixtures showing it all.
There's no lights on the property right now. Be a little surprised if they want to add on lights now and they don't even have lights right now.
You know, it really comes down to what are they gonna use that building for?
Right.
You know, there's no,
There could be lights
So-
on just the exterior of the building maybe for,
I was gonna say, so there is a parking lot outside.
yeah,
So for safety purposes, they would need at least wall packs, if not goosenecks in the parking lot.
yeah. Yeah, they'll be adding a whole new parking area, it looks like from the plan, between the two buildings.
Their purpose is to construct a 4-unit commercial building with supporting infrastructure.
Oh, if there's 4 units, you definitely gotta have more lighting in there, I would think.
Yeah, because in 4 units, it sounds like they planning on tenants.
Mm-hmm.
You get tenants, definitely you gotta have,
Mm-hmm.
well, 7,200 square feet, you're not gonna squeeze too much in there. That's a 7-Eleven size building.
Yeah. Maybe two tenants.
Maybe.
Well, it looks like 4 tenants here.
Does it show that somewhere?
Well, you can kind of, if you go into the plans that were provided,
Can you specify where in the plans provided?
yeah, hold on a second. Let me zoom out. What page am I on? Of course, I don't get a page number.
Yeah.
Oh, page 6. Page 6 of the plans. You can see the building's delineated out by the crossed line, the hatched line on the
4
building.
units, yep, okay, got it. 25 by 60 each, yeah, those
Yeah.
are small.
But that's kind of like, envision up where 603 used to be.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
Those
the
buildings are
garage
very
door
similar like this.
type, yeah.
Like where pipe dream?
No, where 603 used to be by exit 5.
Okay.
Or
yeah,
like,
this would be right
Okay.
across from Kira Way.
Mm-hmm.
is-
yeah.
4 tenants, though, I
I
would
think
think they
there's
would be
Harris,
signage.
Yeah,
Harris
they'll have to
Avenue.
have something.
And I think
seating
there's a
and-
outfit that has
Looks like they
usually
have
trucks
garage
all over the place.
Mm.
Perhaps.
They do
One
refrigeration.
drawing
Mhm.
here,
you know,
Looks like they have what?
garage
ship-
doors.
trucks
Yeah,
ship
I figured
refrigerated
that's
stuff.
exactly what
There's
type of
small
building.
They seem to be
doors.
all over the place.
Mm.
And there's a bigger, I suppose, is a garage door, because it goes up and down, doesn't swing out the way an entrance door does.
This is really fun with no staff and no presenter here. It's almost like a magical mystery tour kind of thing, you know? Oh, I think it's this. Oh, it's over here. Look at page 6. Get the presenter in.
Yeah, we've had no guidance whatsoever other than between our intuition and what we see from the plan that they presented to us.
So that's exactly what we're gonna use as our motivation for our recommendation. All right, so what I have so far is, we need renderings, elevations, colors, materials, a signage plan, a lighting plan with fixtures, and we need to add purple lilacs to the landscape plan.
That's good.
Everybody agree?
Sounds good.
All right, great. That will be our recommendation to the planning board.
You know, these plans, I think, were done by a surveyor, so it doesn't have the engineering finesse that.
Yeah, and luckily, because there's a pre-existing building, it's already pre-developed, so no rock walls or anything to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay, moving along.
And I presume that we get the renderings, the architecture won't be anything fancy like everything that's down there.
Well, we don't know if it's a metal building or a concrete building or a,
Right.
I have no idea.
Oh. Okay, found a second document about Ricker Ave, but
Tip-
there's,
Yeah, typical
it's all
unit
just
is 1,800 square feet,
information.
so 1,800 by 4.
okay. That is it for our design reviews. Moving on to other business, and, Mr. Ellis,
Well, you have seen my communications. I think you're all well aware of them. It's up to you folks to discuss. I don't think I can add anything.
okay?
I'm here if you want to ask me specific questions.
Sure. Then I will summarize what you stated in your letter, just for the record, if that's all right with you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Ellis had provided a letter a couple of months ago now, citing your concern for the Heritage Commission in that we were less focusing on historical resources than we were aesthetic values in the site plans. Is that correct? Okay. My initial response to that, I think, is that many of our site review plans simply just don't really have any historical resources attached to them. We're looking at site plans for undeveloped property, so typically we'll try to look for whether or not there's a rock wall, for instance, there, or cellar holes in a couple of instances in the past. We have seen some historical resources on the property that we needed to try to preserve. But in many cases, we're looking at undeveloped property where a new site is being, developed with a new building, or an existing building is being modified that is not technically considered historical. So I think the reason that we tend to focus on aesthetics is because those are the types of reviews that we're looking at for the most part. In certain cases, for instance, we've been talking a lot about 2 Litchfield Road with the barn there. We're certainly trying to preserve any historic properties when we can, but there aren't that many in town. And then as far as historic resources outside of the properties that are marked as historic, again, I think we have limited site design reviews where we have to consider historical resources versus just looking at aesthetics.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Ellis, I think you referenced a couple of lists that are available, including, I think from your letter, some hidden gems that we don't know about and only certain magical people can find.
That's the archaeological resources. Unfortunately, they're not made publicly available.
Okay.
That's a universal practice because it protects them to a degree from things like vandalism and looting.
And that's fine. So maybe in the spirit of self-improvement, okay, what would you suggest that we should do, or maybe that we should ask staff to do with regards to those properties that come before us? Should there be someone who reviews these lists before the property comes to us?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it's the planning department. I know there's a lot of sort of
Mr. Ellis,
history
I'm
around
sorry.
this.
I'm sorry to cut you off. If you could just please introduce yourself on the microphone.
Yes, sure. I'm Dave Ellis, 1 Wilshire Drive, Londonderry.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, folks. Historically, Laura Gandia had an account that allowed her to access the state lists, and she had been designated as a contact point to know about these archaeological resources. When she left, nobody took that over.
I think that's,
Mike Malaguti did communicate to me privately in a one-on-one that he was going to look into restarting that when we come up with the new year. At the moment, there is a membership fee that the town would have to pay to get access to those state resources. In January, they are going to make it freely available.
Oh, okay. So your recommendation then would be that we suggest to staff, perhaps starting in January when it's a freebie, that someone from staff, and they should be made known to us who that is,
Yeah.
should, before these properties, as part of the process, before these properties come to us.
Yes, before they come to you or the planning board, somebody on the planning department should go into the database, look up and see if there's a historic resource on that site, and if there is, make you aware of it. All of these state-listed properties have a file with them. It's typically about 5 or 6 pages, but it can be as many as 30 or 40 pages that explain why it is historic.
And as far as the archaeological,
They have the same information, but it's something that would be disclosed only if there's a development coming up. In other words, if some developer goes to the planning department and says, I want to build here or I want to do that, the planning department or their designated rep can find out from the state if there's an archaeological resource there and make you aware of it, as well as making the developer aware of it.
now, is that a different process than going to these state lists?
The state list is just typically buildings.
Buildings, okay.
It's not archaeological. Lithia Spring is an example of an archaeological site that we all know about because it's public knowledge.
So staff would have to ask someone in state, it doesn't,
Someone on staff would have to ask and check, and that would primarily apply to stuff that isn't yet developed.
okay.
That would be undeveloped land. If you've already got buildings on it, it's probably not got an archaeological site on it. There aren't many of them. I mean, when they did the Exit 4A planning, the Department of Transportation published a report, and in the whole of the area around Exit 4A, they found there were 3 identified archaeological sites.
In all of
That's
Londonderry
how you
or
get
just
to
that
know
area?
about them, is because somebody there published it.
That's just in the area of the 4A exit?
It goes right across the Rockingham Road,
Yep.
Route 28. One of them is the old Aiken Mill. I don't know whether you're aware of where that is. It's close to the Derry line. It's out on the rail trail. There was another one down near Pittori Paving, where they had found some Indian arrowheads and things like that. There was another site up on the hill where Woodmont is going to be developing.
Okay.
Other than that, it's when when someone comes in and says, well, I'm going to develop on this property, and they've got some house there or something, you can go to the state list and anyone with an account can log in and look and download the file. And those are files that ideally you should review. I mean, the sort of thing that can happen, and I don't want to be too specific because it's just an odd instance. There was a situation, a property came before you about a year ago, I believe it was, for some activity up near Smith Road. I raised the question then because I knew the building that what used to be there was a listed property. You folks were unaware of it. Neither I nor you had the file because I don't have an account anymore. The developer's response was, well, the building was taken down years ago, so it's no longer a factor. I went home and checked on Google where you had dated images. The building was taken down only 3 months before he came before you. If you'd had the file, you might have looked into it and found out what was going on.
Yes. Yeah, 'cause our problem is really we need a,
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you
Resource,
don't
yeah.
get the information from the planning department, there's not much you can do.
right, I mean, none of us really probably know
No.
how to do that research. And
Yeah.
I know Laura was quite good at it. And very,
Laura was good,
very diligent.
and
Before that, I know, I think, I know Tim Thompson had some involvement with it to point out, because when the plans come in, they come in the planning department, and then the planner or director of,
Yeah.
planning department looks at, that's all we have now is just a director who is also assistant town manager.
Yeah, yeah.
And.
We don't have a town planner at the moment.
Right, right, and that would be part of fall in the duties of the town planner.
Yeah,
Because I know when Laura left, we lost that contact of doing the research
yeah,
on the history, which is part of the design review committee's work, and then made aware to, this commission.
yeah.
But also, is the contact with the certified local government, which is the state resource for getting grants, applying for grants and everything. So we have no one now. I still get stuff from them that I send to Kelly. But, I mean, recent history I sent to Mike. Mike did do some response work to it. So where it is now, I think we probably don't have any resource involved with certified local government. So that puts us in a bind also. So there's two things that we really need and rely upon staff to do it. I know some small towns, there's some, one or two active members in the Heritage Commission that will do all this work, but it's a lot of work for that individual. And I think you're the one that's already helped us out the most, David, in pointing things out. So, I mean, you're, to me, a valuable resource to us also.
Yes, but as an individual, my account would have cost me $400 a year, which is why I dropped it. The town gets it for $100 a year.
Yeah, the town should be paying for that. You to
There
use
is
the-
another list as well that Art, you are well aware of because you helped create it. There's about 140 properties in a town list that the state doesn't
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
And there's not much overlap between the two.
No, because it was, basically, that came from it was a task force, and they created the basic rules for it as, was it 100 years old, 75% of the original
Yeah.
architecture on the outside. It had to have significance either from some historical fact about it, or the historical fact of the architecture. And then the fourth one was what the commission felt was historically important.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that was developed with over, I think, about a year of, members of staff and the, well, actually the task force taking pictures around town of all these 100-year-plus houses, and then sitting down through probably maybe a dozen meetings, and looking at all the pictures and saying, we want that, and that's how we get that list.
Yeah,
So, I
my
mean,
recommendation would be that that list be compared at some time to the state database, and you try and get the properties on the town list into the state database. I'd be more than willing to help as a volunteer with that, but it would not be appropriate for me as a private citizen to submit this whole rash of properties. It might be appropriate for this commission to do it, or it might be appropriate for some town employee to do it.
Yes, because we've talked about updating that list. Right now, it's been an idea, but we had been looking, and this probably goes back when Laura first was, in the staff of the planning department, is securing a grant through certified local government for an intern to come and work in the summer, at first going through the assessing records for, the properties that met that criteria, drawing up a list of properties and going out and photographing those properties. But yes, I know the state looks at 50 years or older. Our problem is that we started doing that, we probably got about half the houses in town.
Yes, and that is why the file would be downloaded and come before you for review. I mean, one thing that we all need to remember is these historic resources, the town, the Heritage Commission, the Historic Heritage Commission, part of the town, does not have any authority to say, no, you can't, you've definitely got to preserve it. All you can do is talk to the proposed or talk about the proposed development and say, it would be nice if you could do something like this. I think Heritage Commission's role, the state resources thing likens it to where the Conservation Commission might say, well, you can improve this by limiting the amount of impervious surfaces to help drainage. It's a recommendation, they can't enforce it. And in the same way, Heritage Commission can't enforce or prevent a development. The developer comes in and says, yes, it's a historic resource, I still want to tear it down. They can. You can't legally stop them. But what you can do is negotiate with them and see what can be protected.
Yes.
It seems to me, Doctor, I'm sorry, Art.
I just would, one of the other things that came out of the task force for preserving, historical structures was potential legislation, which I think Tim Thompson drew up, working with the commission. And then it was presented as a bill to the general court. And David and I went up and testified for Londonderry's behalf and what our regulations were. I think there was a general liking about it, but then once the assessor from the city of Portsmouth got up and testified and then he said, 3/4 of their houses would qualify for what we had, so. So that took care of that.
Yeah, the problem as well is it's very difficult for government to do this because it amounts, if you try to make it enforceable, it amounts to a taking of property. And that
Yes.
is not allowed. At least not in my adopted country.
Yeah, it isn't here either. We have a lot of similarities, so. The English common law the courts use here are exactly what is over in the mother country.
Dr. Ellis, I just consulted with the chair here, and we have an alternate position that may be coming open in December. And I have a wonderful suggestion. Okay. we-
Yes, I looked into it. In fact, I communicated with Art about 2 years ago now, I think it was. And I put my name in for a position. That was just before Laura went. And then she left and I got a notice that said, no, we're not interested.
I cannot believe that.
Yeah, I don't either.
If I can make a couple of suggestions, one would be Kirsten Hilden, I'm gonna mess up her last name.
Kirsten.
Hilden.
Yeah, I can talk to Kirsten.
Talk to Kirsten, maybe get, I know there's a requirement, you do a fact sheet, and I know you'll ace that.
I think David
Not
did
really a
one.
big deal. I've just gone through that for the Morrison House thing.
That's great, and the added advantage is perhaps you could be the person on our committee that can work through these problems you've identified with our
staff.
failure to access these lists or the information on these lists. And I can't believe a planning department that's as shorthanded as ours currently would turn down the prospect of having a volunteer of your credentials address this problem. How about that about putting you on the spot, huh?
Yeah, I would, well, I talked with David, I know a couple of years ago
I'll
about
get in,
it, because
I'll
we
get
could
in
use it.
touch with Kirsten and say that I'm interested.
Yes,
I have to say, I'm 83 years old, and you ain't gonna get many more years out of me before they put me in a box.
We'll take what we can get.
we still got a lot of life there, David. Well, the next year I'll be 82, so I'll be joining the club.
What else from your letter should we be thinking about, or have we pretty well covered it?
That's about all that was in the letter that we were discussing. I was going to ask if you had received the hard copy letter that I sent a couple of weeks ago to yourselves with a copy to the planning board. I sent it to the town address and asked that it come to this commission concerning 2 Litchfield Road going forward, now the barn's gone.
Yes, I saw that.
I did not get that.
I think, John, I sent you an email
I
copy
think
of it, I believe.
I think I forwarded it, but maybe I didn't. Nobody got it?
I didn't get anything.
I don't
I'm on the
recall
planning
anything
board,
about
too.
that. But I will, I'll go back through my emails and make sure I didn't
And
dismiss
I'll
something
double check, because
concerning
I did see something, as a matter of fact, as part of the discussion on the next little thing here was, I think one of our responsibilities is an annual inspection of 2 Litchfield Road. I did that with Jim last year. But I think that was a little ad hoc. But I think we probably need to get that scheduled with Mr. Flyer and kind of look at the agreement that we have in terms of the requirements.
Yes.
And from your letter, which is why I know it's not only the exterior of the building, but it's also the interior that we're responsible for.
If you read the easement, it lays it out.
Yeah.
I would personally recommend that the inspection involve Nick Codner.
There was an objection last time around about saying that the agreement allowed only members of the Heritage Commission to perform the inspection. There was supposedly some specific language. Have not checked that.
I would like you to consider getting a lawyer to look at that, because I'm not sure, and with due respect, I'm not sure that the members of this commission are qualified to inspect building integrity.
I fully agree.
I do too.
As a member of this commission, I fully agree.
I think
at
our
least for
attorney
myself.
is still reviewing things on that, and
It's
if,
still litigation, Ted?
I thought so.
I hadn't heard anything.
The
I know it's going into
easement
litigation,
allows
but
you
where it
to
is, I
call
don't know.
someone in to do it.
Again, I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
feedback from when we went last time, because the first thing I did last time was invite, it was Nick, I think, and I got a letter back from them saying, and from Mike,
I can
that said no.
certainly see members of the general public being excluded,
Mhm.
but if the commission feels that they need a technical expert to accompany them, I don't believe that is excluded.
Mr. Chair, question for you.
Yes, sir.
Have we only ever done a inspection on this property last year? Only once.
So I don't believe that we've kept up with the annual inspection. I'm
Because
not
this
sure.
easement has
how
been on this
long-
property for about 15, almost 20 years now?
Right.
And why was it never done prior?
Or you have benign neglect.
Yeah, I honestly do not have a good answer to that
Hmm.
question.
But I think that's not an excuse not to remedy the situation.
I'm
and
not saying that
maybe,
it shouldn't be, but I'm just wondering why it was never done before.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to reread the easement for the 400th time
Mhm.
and find out what's the situation in terms of bringing in an expert. I mean, last time I reached out to Jim, because he certainly knows more about building construction than I ever did. And-
Would you like me to reach out to our land use attorney on this issue and see where she's at on this?
That might be great,
Yeah.
if that's something you could
Yeah,
do,
that
Ted.
would be, so we know where that is. I mean, we certainly could hire well, we could use our third-party reviewer, either Stantec or,
Right. We just need to find out what the situation is with the document and make sure that if there has been any changes or not been any changes on that property, and regarding the inspection, who actually can or cannot be there, if we can move forward with that.
Do you have copies of the easement available? I can email you one if you need it.
No, I've got it.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Have they taken down the barn, do you know? Have they taken the barn down already, or?
I haven't driven up Mammoth Road in a while.
I will be driving by it on my way home.
David, didn't it go into for demolition delay?
There is a demolition delay committee, and I don't know whether it would go before them, I imagine.
I haven't heard anything.
But I mean, the
That's right,
decision,
David is in.
the barn is in such a condition now that it has to come down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That is, we've gone through that debate.
Yes.
My concern is that the house not be allowed to deteriorate like that. It's been deteriorating for the last 7 years since Mr. Flyer took ownership.
Yeah, I believe, if I recall, that the interior has also undergone a lot of changes that changed it from its original state to to something that's unrecognizable compared to it what it was supposed to be. So it certainly warrants an inspection annually to ensure that that the tenant stays within their commitment with the easement, and that also the town and this board even stays with our commitment to the easement as well.
Yeah, well, the Historic District Commission has a lot more power of enforcement than the Heritage Commission side of you.
Sure.
And I believe the easement places the Historic District Commission and Planning Board as jointly responsible for the property.
I will say, I was inside that building when it was first taken over by Mr. Flyer, and it has not changed one bit on the inside ever since he took it over.
Yes.
It has looked the
To
same
be
ever
clear,
since
I
he took it
wasn't
over.
suggesting that Mr. Flyer made the changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, an interesting point, though, is I think there are some specific things in the easement regarding electricity and some other things to do with the interior of the building that Mr. Flyer, his predecessor, whoever, we have some wall plugs that are on the outside of the walls and things of that sort that I think are specifically excluded in the easement, if I recall correctly, so.
Anything mounted on the surface of the walls is excluded. It's supposed to be run through the wall cavities.
So,
So the receptacles are recessed normal, like they are normal?
Yes, I mean, if you've got to put in wiring, you can, your normal outlets that you get on the wall outlets are acceptable, but the wiring goes up inside. You don't have conduit running around.
so the interesting point will be if we see things that are contrary to the easement that may have been in existence for a period of time, what is the Heritage Commission's position on that? And I'm not looking to answer that today. That's a
It
dicey
basically
area.
dates back to 2006, I think, is when it was established.
Yes,
So
I
it's-
think that was when it was sold, but also it went through process of zoning and then putting it in the historic district, and the owner at that time wanted it in the historic district and wanted a agreement to protect the historical nature of it also.
Yes.
And I think both parties, the town and the owner, signed that agreement.
Yes. That was my understanding, and then it was bought by Nutfield Publishing or Deb Paul, or I don't know whether it was an individual or a corporate.
It was like Kroll Corners
Yeah,
properties, and then now that changed to CC Properties, which I think is Mr. Flyer.
yes. I know she did some work because there's a lot of the floors in the kitchen area are the old wide pine flooring, and there's a floating floor been put on the top to protect them. I think we beat this to death, folks.
Absolutely.
Well, and hopefully the next time we talk, you're sitting behind one of these desks up here, so,
I'll get in touch with Kirsten.
thank you, sir.
I think regarding our prior conversation, that it might be a good idea to request formally from town staff, from our planning department, to investigate at a minimum us getting back on these town lists, right? Us getting access to them and having them available to this commission.
Thank you.
So that'd be the Emmett database, and then the
That's right.
historical or archaeological
Yes.
list.
Well, the
Someone
records,
from town staff did call me on the telephone shortly after that letter was written And we went through it, but it was determined then that it would, for the sake of a couple of months, wait until January when everything becomes a lot simpler. But now Mike has resigned, and I'm not quite sure what the status is.
I
Sure.
think none of us don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and if I can, please, let's refrain from discussing that particular topic
Yeah, I know.
at this meeting.
The historic file should be readily available to anybody and after the beginning of the year. Because we, we knew about it for that, on the demolition delay committee, of which I'm a member. We knew about it, but then we saw it was like $100 to get the thing. But coming up January, it's free. But we were able to get the file because the owner of the building over on, it's 4 Nashua Road, I believe is the address, where they've taken it down. He called them up, and they sent him a copy of the file. So he gave us copies.
Yeah, as a property owner, I would imagine
And
it
their
would be easier
report
to get
of
the
about
file.
11 years ago was that there wasn't anything of historic significance in the building. And so we did not have a delay on it. We said we wanted to have 10 days to be able to go in and take pictures of it. And so I met with the owner, Mr. DeLuca, and went in and took, I don't know, like 125 pictures of just the way things were set up. And there was I agree with their report, there was very little of historic significance that was left. It had been turned into a big office for real estate agents, so they'd have like 45 agents had offices in there, or at least little counter spaces. So they really monkeyed around with it a little lot. So there wasn't any reason to do that. But the important part was, next year, anybody who should be able to get access to those records that are from the state. The other thing is that there was a archaeological dig at the Morrison House, where it is now, when they put in what's called a multi-purpose path out front there that goes from down beyond the kindergarten building all the way up the street and around the corner. It got funding from the feds and the state. And one of the requirements was that they would want to dig around the Morrison House just to see if there's anything there, even though the building had been moved to that site. By now, because it's in the historic district, well, the state paid to have somebody come in, and they made a few test pits, but didn't find very much. And I don't know what happened to that record because I wasn't involved with that at all at that time.
I think the town, I think would have that, but I'm not sure. But there was that was when, they had done some research on the old McAllister house there, the foundation that's there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was part of the house and a barn back early 1900s, and it burned. And there's all sorts of things were found because those days the dump was what was out the window or out the back door, you know, just.
Yeah, because we, from the Historical Society, we were thinking about putting that house onto that foundation. But it would have been really terrible, because you wouldn't have a front yard, as you're saying, to use that old site. So it was decided to put it behind where it is now, or where the cellar hole is now. But, excuse me, there was consideration of doing something there.
Yes, I remember that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have made a note to officially contact town staff to encourage them to investigate us getting access to the Emmett database as well as the archaeological resources that you've suggested. We'll at least get some information on that. Obviously, our next meeting is not until January, so if in the month of January we have lower cost access to those things, I will try to push and see if we can get that, especially if it's free. There's no reason not to do it. I will also personally undertake a review of the 2 Litchfield Road easement. I think you said you will also be taking a look at that so that we can discuss at our next meeting, and make sure that we plan to have an annual review of the property.
You know, if I could add, Mr. Chairman, if, sir, as the rabble-rouser that you are, if anything impedes your applying for an opening here, I would appreciate it if you bring it to the
Only
attention
the
of the
fact
chair.
that I'm usually asleep by 7 o'clock, but I can survive it every 2 months.
Well, I'll put another great recommendation in for you, David, so we can get you on here.
Okay, with that, I think, if I could
Motion
have
to
a-
adjourn?
One thing, at our January meeting, we need to elect officers.
Yes, sir.
So if everyone's satisfied with the current slate, I mean, I can, at that meeting, make a motion to continue with the current slate. Or if someone does want to run, they can let the chair know.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.